I hope you all are doing good and you all are safe at your places. We are here with the session on automation rules, Pardot Automation Rules, which will be taken by Andrea Terrell today. Hello, Andrea. Can you hear me?
Hey there. Excited to get started.
Yes. So let me start recording the session. Okay. So
Yeah, so I can just go ahead and dive into things and share my screen if that works.
yes, sure.
Perfect. Okay, I think it might here, let's see if it there we go. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yes, Andrea, it's visible.
Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Oh, oops, that's not the share screen. Present. Here we go. All right. So the topic of today's presentation, we're talking about acing with automation. So a couple of things I'm planning to cover. So I'm going to do a walkthrough of key automation tools in Pardot. And the primary focus will be automation rules, but knowing kind of what other tools are in your tool chest is a really big part of knowing when an automation rule is the right thing to use. So we're going to walk through a couple of different automation tools that are available there, talk through lots of examples, how to pick the right tool based on what you're trying to accomplish in Pardot. And then I also have a roundup of links, trailheads, blogs, other resources that can help you kind of as you're getting ramped with automating things in Pardot. Just a quick introduction to who I am. So my name is Andrea Terrell. I have a blog called The Spot for Pardot. And I also own a Pardot consulting business called Circante. Our mission is helping marketers succeed across the Salesforce platform. So getting Pardot stood up for the first time, getting Pardot optimized, and then also making sure that it's working seamlessly with other parts of the marketing technology stack, whether that's Sales Cloud, Community Cloud, third-party tools like Qualified, Terminus, making sure that that's all working seamlessly together. Our team is fully remote. We're based in the US, UK, and Canada at the moment, but we serve customers in 15 countries globally and are continually growing. So this is a screenshot of one of our lovely Zoom team meetings. A couple of just kind of quick housekeeping items. If you are on Twitter, would love if you could share some of the insights of what you're learning or anything that's interesting to you from today's presentation. These are kind of the various handles that I check and can reply to you from. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, if I'm going too fast on something, if you'd like to hear another example, feel free to unmute and just throw that out there, or I'll also keep an eye on the chat to answer any questions that pop up. And then a question that always comes up is if you can get a copy of the deck. This is a really solid deck. There's a lot of like links and resources and screenshots and things in there. So if you would like a copy of that, feel free to just drop me an email and I'll make sure that you get one. All right. So one thing I would like to hear from you guys in the chat, if you'd be up for it, is any key things that you're hoping to take away from today's session, whether that's examples, getting a specific question answered. If you have any thoughts on that, I would love to hear what you guys are looking for in the chat. I'll give folks a minute or two here. Anyone have any strong things that they're looking to get out of today's session?
Guys, feel free to post your things in the chat. I can see some messages.
Awesome. Megana just posted, she's new to Pardot, hoping to understand it more. We can definitely touch on that. Absolutely. Jagadeep, how to automate using Pardot, how to Pardot better than the others. Love it. or how Pardot is better than the others? Yeah, we can touch on that. Awesome. If you guys think of anything else, throw it out there because I want to make sure that you're getting what you came for out of the session. I know you're spending your Saturday evening with me here, so want to make sure this time is valuable for everybody. All right. So talking a little bit about kind of essential automation tools and what we're going to be looking at. So there's 6 things I'm going to briefly touch on today that Pardot Pardot users have at their disposal to automate different types of processes. So completion actions is kind of the asset-based level automation, and then all the way up to automation rules, which are kind of the powerhouse tool of Pardot, and a few others that we'll touch on throughout the session. These are, I'm not going to read this to you. This is just some links and some resources that you can reference after this session. So let's start with completion actions and dive into what that means. So completion actions in Pardot can be used to take some kind of action based on an action that the prospect takes. So some kind of prospect activity, you take some kind of action in Pardot. Completion actions are available on forms, form handlers. Those are probably the 2 most common places that completion actions are used. Also on files, so you can take action when somebody interacts with a particular file. Custom redirects, which are links, and we'll get into that a bit deeper in a minute. Email sends, so you can take a completion action based on the prospect opens this email, the prospect clicked this email. You can choose to take action from that, and then page actions, which we'll also get a bit deeper into. One thing to note is that completion actions are not retroactive. So if you set up an action and say, okay, when somebody fills out this form, we're going to send them this autoresponder email, it's going to take place from that point on. And it's going to happen every single time that action occurs. So it's very like if this, then that type of automation. I always learn better through examples. So I'm going to X out of this presentation for just a moment, get into Pardot and show you guys an example of what that would look like. So this is Cercantespar.org, and this is a form that we had set up for an event that we're hosting for Cinco de Mayo, which is celebration on the 5th of May. But we're inviting people to an event. We want to send them these cocktail drink kits. And when somebody fills out a form to register, we need to collect their address information and then send them kind of details about what to do next for the event. So getting into edit the event here. I'm just going to skip right over all the form building steps and go right to completion action since that's our topic of the day. But you'll notice that, so right away, Pardot will prompt you to enter thank you content for the form. So what the user is going to see once that form is completed. And then this section right here, completion actions, is where all of kind of the automation power takes place on this form. So just to give you a sense of what we can do here. So we can add tags to a prospect. We can add somebody to a Salesforce campaign. We can do things like adding them to a list, tweaking their score, assigning them to either a specific user or a group of users. We can update field values, create Salesforce tasks, notify specific users, send emails, or make other tweaks to that person's profile. So in this instance, we're having people sign up for an event. First thing that we want to do is add them to a list so that we have all those attendees aggregated in one spot. We're going to notify our event manager, Sarah Cloth. A couple of other steps that would be really frequent for event signups would be sending an autoresponder email. So I don't have one built out, so I'm just going to pick a test one here. But sending a confirmation to the attendee saying, we got your registration, you're all set. And then also adding to a Salesforce campaign is another very common one that allows you to do reporting and also gives sales the visibility into what's going on. Ooh, and I see Gilda's here in the chat. Hey, Gilda. All right, so any questions on that? If there's anything you'd like me to repeat, definitely feel free to toss it out in the chat. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next topic here. All right, and so in this deck also you'll notice I have some screenshots, and the intent of that is not to talk through it in a ton of detail today, but just so that you have it as a reference in this deck when you go back and try to set some of these things up in your own orgs. One kind of thing to note about having multiple completion actions, a lot of Pardot users assume that they're going to run in the order that they're on the screen, like it's going to start at the top and it's just going to go to the bottom. But Pardot actually is very smart in the background and runs the changes that impact other automations first. So if we have something that has multiple steps here, like assigning a user and notifying assigned user, Pardot's smart enough to know, okay, if we need to notify the assigned user, we need to take care of the assignment first. So it does a little bit of reordering behind the scenes for you in that area. All right. Yeah, and then just a couple of other examples of where this could be used in your environment or your client's environments. So adding prospects to nurture programs based on activity. So if somebody fills out a form to sign up for a webinar, to download a white paper on a particular topic, and you want to add them to an email nurture program that's on that same topic, that's a really good use case for completion actions. Confirmation and thank you emails, that's a super strong one for forms and form handlers. And then also giving visibility to sales. So either creating a task, sending a notification email, adding them to a Salesforce campaign, or doing something to let sales know that a prospect needs to be contacted or took some kind of action. Megana asked, is this a different application or is it part of Salesforce? It's a really good question. So Pardot was acquired by Salesforce in 2013, but compared to other acquisitions, the approach that the Pardot development team has taken is they're really trying to incorporate it into core Salesforce. So you access it by using your Salesforce login. You can access it right inside of Salesforce Lightning. The view that I'm showing you is just logged into pi.pardot.com, which is kind of the original interface. But yeah, it's a part of Salesforce, basically. It's a module that can kind of be toggled or toggled off by your account teams. All right. So next we're going to move on to page actions. So completion actions are really, I see those as most closely linked to like forms, form handlers, emails, like assets that you're building and executing in Pardot. Page actions are a little different in that they're focused on specific website pages that you're working with in Pardot. So automations that are triggered based off of a specific page view.
Hello, Andrea. Is it for me only? Yeah, sure. Guys, please be patient. She will be coming back.
Hey guys, can you hear me now?
Yes, you're audible.
I don't know what happened there, but I got a little pop-up that yeah, told me my webcam was acting up. So yeah, if that happens again, please let me know in the chat or interrupt me so I don't keep rambling. I'm not sure where it cut out, but I'll just kind of repeat this portion on page actions. But page actions are similar to completion actions, but it's specifically tied to page views. So the page view can be anywhere that you have a Pardot tracking code in place. So it can be your own website, it can be a partner's website. The key thing is having the Pardot tracking code applied to that website. A really common example of when page actions are used is for visiting pricing pages. So if if sales is talking to a prospect, they've been nurturing them for a really long time, and a prospect goes to the pricing page of a website. That's something that sales usually really wants to know about. So having some kind of alert that triggers to sales when somebody hits a certain page, that can be really beneficial in a way that marketers can support their sales teams. Another use case that comes up a lot is if somebody visits a particular product page, doing something to flag, okay, this person is interested in XYZ product. We're going to send them targeted emails on this product, or do something else to kind of put them in a targeting bucket for this product. I'm seeing a question in the chat here. What is the impact of Pardot in Salesforce and the role of Pardot? So Pardot's kind of slice of the Salesforce ecosystem is that it's for B2B marketing. So for marketers that work in businesses that are targeting other businesses, or really any marketing in any kind of sales environment where there's a sales team that's following up with leads, interacting with leads, nurturing opportunities. That's kind of the sweet spot that Pardot plays into. And I will share some links and resources at the end also to just get more familiar with the Pardot ecosystem. So my blog is called The Spot for Pardot. There's some other really great content creators in the ecosystem. Jenna Mulvey is my personal favorite. But if you'd like to dive more into the world of Pardot and kind of how it fits in with the Salesforce family of products overall, I have some resources to share there at the very end. All right, so how we set up page actions. So this lives right under automations in Pardot. And similar to completion actions, I think it's easier to understand with an actual example. So we're gonna jump into Pardot and create that. So in Pardot here, we're gonna go under marketing, automation, and then page actions. And we'll pick, so Sercante has a training course called Pardot Admin Bootcamp. I'm just gonna open, oops, didn't open that. I'm gonna open this one so you guys can see how this is set up. But so basically when we're setting up a page action, we're gonna name it, similar to everything we create in Pardot. We're gonna put the web URL that we want to flag to take action when somebody visits. We can choose a score that's associated with this. So if we're trying to rate prospects based on their overall activity, we can update that here. And then down here, this will look very familiar to the form section that we just reviewed, but we have a whole host of actions that can take place once somebody visits this particular page. So similar to kind of what we looked at with forms, it's like if somebody fills out this form, then we're going to take this action. With page actions, it's if somebody views this page, we're going to take this action. All right. And then one last thing to note about page actions. So we can also do this thing called marking it as a priority page. And what that does is it makes the page view more visible in the prospect's activity history. So by default, Pardot's going to track all website visits when you have that Pardot tracking code set up. And it's going to show a whole list of all the pages that they viewed. But if you want an extra special page to be called out separately in the activity history, mark it as a priority page. We'll do that. All right. Any questions on that? Feel free to unmute or drop that into the chat, and we'll try to talk through those. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to our next section, which is custom redirects. All right. So custom redirects are similar to page actions in that it's tracking web activity. But what makes custom redirects a little bit different is that it's tracking the link that's bringing people there. So a common use case is like if you are trying to drive signups for a webinar, you might choose to create a page action on that and say, okay, anybody who views this webinar page, we want to take some kind of special action on them. You may also be driving people to that webinar from many different channels. So you could say, okay, we're having our trusted partner XYZ Co. promote this webinar. We're running digital ads to promote this webinar. We have a print piece where we're promoting this webinar. And so custom redirects are basically like tracked URLs in Pardot, where you're sending people to the same page, but you're generating a different URL for each of those groups, so that when they come in, you can say, okay, these people came from XYZ Co's promotional efforts. These leads came in from the ads that we're running. These leads came in from the print piece. So very similar to what we just looked at with page actions. I'm gonna go into custom redirects here. And I'm just gonna open one that my team has already created. But very similar to page actions. Again, we're gonna name it. We're gonna put the URL that is in question here. And then we can also specify those completion actions. So page action would apply to every single person that views the web page. A custom redirect would only take actions based on people who are accessing a page through a specific link. So slightly nuanced difference. Does anybody have any questions on that or examples of where they've seen that used? Nope. All right, we'll keep rolling then. Okay, so let's talk about automation rules, because this is the kind of the big powerhouse tool that Pardot has available for taking various kinds of actions. Oh, I see a question in the chat here. Can you show the output of custom redirects? Yes, absolutely. Let's go to, I'm going to X out of this. Okay, so this is the final, this is kind of a saved version of the automation rule. And the link that we're setting, actually, let me find a better example. Let's do this one. So this is a survey that we're sending people to for one of our bootcamp courses. So it's a Google form, and we want to track who's actually going through and viewing this survey that's been created. So we set this up, we added a name to indicate what it is, we put a URL to say where we're directing the person to, and then Pardot will generate this tracked URL for us, so that if you click it, it takes a second because it's doing a little redirect on the background, but it takes attendees to this same spot. But we know once they click on this, who clicked on it and how many people clicked on it. This example, it doesn't look like maybe this one. This is created for the coming November 5th. So, but like we can see number of unique clicks, so individual people that have clicked on it, total clicks overall, and then we can see the list of prospects who have engaged with that in the past year. Let me see if I can find one with more metrics, because that might be a little. Let's do this one. Jumpstart initial install video. So this is a file that we have on our drive, kind of walking through the initial setup of Pardot. We can see 16 people have clicked on this ever, 19 people total have clicked on it, and then a whole list of every single person that's engaged with that. Mina asked a question about page layouts and Salesforce admin. So this is, page actions in the Salesforce admin section. This is actually totally different. So the page actions that we're talking about are only for Pardot users and are accessed through the Pardot setup. In the Salesforce equivalent of page actions or quick actions it's totally different and unrelated, which is confusing because the wording is a little bit similar. Akin asked a question about, do we need to have the tracking code in place for page actions and custom redirects? For page actions, yes, you do have to have the tracking code in place. For custom redirects, you do not. So what Pardot is doing with the custom redirects is basically spinning up this unique URL, and it's tracking interaction with this URL. Let Oh no, hold on. Can you guys hear me right now?
Yes, Andrea, you're audible to everybody.
I'm gonna leave my video off because maybe that's I got another error message that my microphone is going out. So let's do video off and see how far we get. But yeah, so long story short, page actions, yes, we need the tracking code. Custom redirects, no, we do not. Sonia asked, are custom redirects applicable only for prospects? So for custom redirects, it will track any click. So whether or not somebody's in your database, it will record that a click has taken place. But for this list here at the bottom where it's listing like names and contact information of who's clicked on that link, though that would only show the people that you have in your database that are cookied. Akin asked about, do we get a tracking code for a dedicated campaign for page action? That's a really good question. And I think it depends a little bit on the situation. So if it's a scenario where you're tracking something on your own website, like a page that's always gonna be live 365 days a year kind of thing, like the pricing page, I would just use your general website tracking campaign for that. If it is something that you're creating as part of like a one-time initiative, like if Sercante were exhibiting at Dreamforce 2021 and we wanted to track all of the different assets that were linked to Dreamforce, I could see a use case there for trying to group, like use separate tracking code for those pages. But in most cases, just using the regular tracking code is okay. So short answer, it depends, but in most cases, the website tracking code is probably, the generic one is probably fine. All right. So please keep the questions coming in chat. And then let's change gears and talk a little bit about automation rules. Okay, so I'm gonna leave this out of presentation mode because we're probably gonna be jumping right back into Pardot. But automation rules, so every kind of the examples that we've talked about so far have been very like, if this, then this, 100% of the time. So if anybody fills out a form, do this. If anybody clicks on this link, do this. What automation rules let you do is get a bit more granular about who you're taking those actions on. So maybe you're gonna say, okay, if somebody registers for a webinar that also happens to be in this industry and in this geography, we're going to do something different than what we do with the rest of the list. That's where automation rules can really come to shine. A few examples that come up pretty frequently. So assigning prospects. So like when prospects meet a certain level of activity, getting those assigned to sales users, enrolling people in nurture programs, creating tasks for sales, and then also just kind of some database cleanup, housekeeping types of things. But let's pop over and look at a live example. So it's under automation and automation rules. Let me create a fresh one. Like everything that you create in Pardot, it'll prompt you to put it in a folder. I'm going to leave it in uncategorized because I'll delete it right afterwards. You can also add a description of what it is that you're building, which is really, really useful so that you can keep these clean and go back later and check what's going on. All right, but so this section that you'll notice we didn't have on forms, page actions, or custom redirects is this rules section. So we can set the match type first, which is either it needs to match all of the criteria that you set, or match any kind of combination of the criteria. So I'm going to keep it as match all for right now. And let's say in this example that we talked about that Cinco de Mayo event registration form. So let's say our sales team wants to monitor that form and see if anybody with a VP title or above registers for that event. and is going to take some kind of separate follow-up action on them. So we can say, okay, one of our criteria is that the prospect form Cinco de Mayo 2021 was completed successfully. And then the other criteria that we want is, let's see, prospect default field, job title contains VP. So this rule would look to see anybody that matches both of these things, and then we can go ahead and take some kind of action. So these actions are very similar to what you saw in the form and customer direct completion actions, but we can do things like, okay, we're going to create a Salesforce task. We can call this VP alert or whatever we want to call it. We can, let's see what other things we could do here. We can send, can notify whoever the assigned user is, take any kind of action on those types of things. One other thing I'll highlight in this rules section here is that we can also create rule groups. So if you want to say, okay, they need to meet all of these criteria, but in this scenario, we're okay if they have a job title of VP or they're, actually, that's not a great example. I think location is a really good example of that. So let's say we want, okay, anybody who filled out the form, anybody who's a VP level, but we want to target UK and Canadian VPs only. So we could say prospect default field, country contains Canada, or prospect default field, country contains UK or United Kingdom. We can say, okay, they can match any of these, but they have to meet at least one of these to meet the whole criteria for the whole rule. So can these toggles let you get to some more like and or logic at different levels here. Something else that's available for automation rules that isn't available for in other spots is we can also set this to repeat. So if you want somebody to be evaluated against this rule, wait a period of time, and then check again to see if they still meet the criteria, we can use this repeating rule functionality and say, okay, every 30 days, we're going to check and see if this person has done this, has met this criteria again. You can also limit total matches or let them continually keep matching this over and over and over again. A really common use case for this repeating rule functionality is like things like opt-in compliance. So if you want to say, okay, if somebody's filled out any form on our website or has taken any kind of like this type of action, we want to consider them eligible to be mailed. Repeating automation rules let you continually reevaluate that to make sure those people are still okay to reach out to. All right, any questions on automation rules, please drop those in the chat. And then similar to these other sections here, a lot of what we just talked through, I've kind of put some step-by-step instructions together and some different examples and screenshots that you can refer back to later. A couple of other just considerations with automation rules. So they are retroactive. So any prospect that meets this criteria at any point in time will match this automation rule and have those actions taken. They're constantly running in the background. And then they'll only take action once on a prospect unless you set them to repeat. One other really nice thing that I'll show you about automation rules is when you create them, it creates them in this paused state, and you can click to preview matches, and it will show you who would meet this criteria if you ran it today. So none of these actions will take place until these rules are unpaused. So it's a little bit of kind of a check and balance to make sure that you don't accidentally create an automation that's going to overwrite a big chunk of your database. This is probably going to meet 0 people because the Cinco de Mayo form isn't live yet. And I'm just going to go ahead and delete this rule. All right. Other common use cases for automation rules. So raising or lowering scores based on different types of activity or inactivity, adding people to distribution lists, updating campaign statuses in Salesforce, other like grading functions to help rate prospect quality, and then assigning and notifying prospects when they're ready to be handed off to sales. All right. So 2 more automation tools that we're going to talk through briefly. So segmentation rules is a way of divvying up lists, and then dynamic lists are a second way that we're going to talk through. But segmentation rules they're pretty similar to automation rules. But the thing that's different about these is that it's a one-time, point-in-time slice of your database. So segmentation rules are used to create a list of prospects and then take an action on that specific segment based on specific criteria. So I'm going to pull up an example. And we'll just go into this test one here. Oh, wait. All right, so very similar to automation rules, we can set the match criteria for who this is applied to. In this case, let's kind of just use some of the same ones here. But so you're setting your criteria, and you're setting up those same actions that would take place. But again, the thing that's different with automation rules is that this runs one time. Automation rules, you set it up, it runs continually. It's constantly looking to see who meets that criteria, and then it's taking those actions. Segmentation rules are a one chop slice of everybody who at this moment in time meets this criteria. We're going to take these actions on these people. A scenario where this comes up really commonly is if you're updating a form or you're updating an asset to add completion actions. So maybe you created an event registration page and you forgot to add an autoresponder email. So you go back a week later, you add the autoresponder email in. From that point forward, everybody who fills out the forms can get that autoresponder, but you want to do kind of like a catch up so that anybody who filled it out to date would get that email. A segmentation rule is a good tool for that. Megan asked a great question. What's the difference between an automation rule and a segmentation rule? The core difference is that an automation rule runs real time. Sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. An automation rule runs ongoing. So once you start it, it's going to keep running until you turn it off. A segmentation rule is a one-time automation that takes place. So as soon as we create this and click run segmentation, it's going to take those actions and then it's going to stop doing what it's doing. All right. So again, we'll have a couple of like screenshots and things in here to have as a reference, but just some examples of how this is done. So ways you can use it in your org, segmenting by location. So taking a chop of all prospects that are in a certain geographic area, segmenting by product interest as a point in time snapshot. Another use case that does come up, so there's a limit on how many automation rules you can have in your Pardot environment. So if you run out of automation rules, segmentation rules can be a great place for that. And then also suppression lists. So if you want to create a segment of people that should be removed from all comms, segmentation rules could be an option for that. Another tool that is I just wanted to touch on very briefly. That's very similar to a segmentation rule and is frequently confused with that, is something called dynamic lists. It's under that same section, segmentation, but we set this up as a list. We're gonna call this test. And so a dynamic list is basically a tool in Pardot where you set your rule criteria of who you want to be included on that list, and then it continually refreshes the list. So similar to an automation rule, it's running all the time. But the thing that's different between dynamic lists and automation rules is that you aren't taking action. Like the only action that the dynamic list is doing is it's adding and removing people from the list. So if you wanted something that, like if we wanted to say, okay, for all time, we want to pick everybody who is in Canada. We could set our criteria. Similar to automation rules, we could set multiple criteria, but then this list is going to continually refresh and see who meets that criteria. So subtle differences between these, which brings us to our next topic, which is how to pick which tool to use for which jobs. And I would say at a very high level, the number one rule to follow is trying to pick the simplest tool for the job. So if you have a form, the next kind of the nearest automation tool available is completion actions. So I would gravitate towards that over everything else, unless it doesn't meet requirements for some reason. So things with simple if-then criteria, asset completion action. So like 100% of people who fill out this form need this action taken. Completion actions will do that very well. Same with page actions and custom redirects. It's just very clean. Like if this one thing is true, then do this other thing. If you start getting into like, if somebody does this and this and this and this and that, then we do this, then you kind of need to level up and go to automation rules, segmentation rules, or in some cases, dynamic lists. This handy dandy chart is something that I've had bookmarked since the earliest days that I was a Pardot admin. But this kind of is a really good way to think about which tool to pick for the job. So what the rule is based on. So if it's based on like multiple criteria or just a single action, if it's just a single action, completion actions are the way to go. If the rule is based on criteria, then the next thing to ask is, do I need to do this once or do I need to do this ongoing? If it's one time only, segmentation rule is the best tool for the job there. If it is something that's going to be repeating, then you kind of move on to the next stop on the train here. And then desired outcome. So like, what do you want to have take place after we've evaluated that criteria? If you want to take action and do something, automation rule is the way to go. But if it's just having an updated list, dynamic list is going to be the best and simplest tool for that. Does anyone have any questions on that or scenarios that they've run into where it's been tricky to pick the right tool? This is tricky stuff. And once you start getting into examples, I would highly just recommend like printing out this flow chart and thinking about it, because it usually gets you to the right action. And some of these links in this deck that I'll be sharing also have lots of other examples and scenarios and things that can help you kind of dig in a little bit deeper on this topic. Megana asked, do dynamic lists work continuously? And yes, they do. So as every time a prospect is edited, Pardot's going to reevaluate to see which dynamic list it should belong on. And so it's continuously refreshing. A couple of examples specifically about choosing between automation rules and dynamic lists. So the two parts of automation rules, we set the rules and we set the actions that take place. And the main goal of what you're building is the action that's being taken. So like if somebody matches this, then we're doing this. And it doesn't always have to involve a list, but sometimes it will. Dynamic list, all we're setting up is the rules, and the goal of what you're trying to do there is getting to that continuously updated list. So people can match and unmatch, and you'll always end up with a list of people that meet the criteria that you set. So an example kind of how this would apply. So if you wanted to say, okay, all US-based leads who are named Keith for whatever reason, you could create an automation rule for that, say, okay, here's my criteria, and then here's what I want to do once I find those people. Whereas a dynamic list, kind of the equivalent is like you'd find those people, and then the output would be that list, but there are no actions that you could apply. And Megan asked, is this just for updating, or can you add this to a new list? So dynamic lists, you actually have to set them as dynamic when you're creating them for the first time. So if you create a list as a static list where you're like manually adding and removing prospects, you can't change that into a dynamic list, but you can create a net new dynamic list. Banu asked, apart from these point and click tools, we have Apex coding. So within Pardot, you can, you're building like forms, landing pages, emails. And so like HTML and JavaScript are coding tools that you can use to expand what you're doing there and automate. Pardot also does have its own API. So if you want to run code against your prospects or take action on prospects with code, using the Pardot API is one way to do that. And then these prospects also frequently will exist in Salesforce as leads and contacts. So if you're creating Apex that touches leads and contacts on the Salesforce side, that's another tool at your disposal to automate. All right, so that's kind of what I have to walk through with you guys today on automation tools. As promised, I also kind of aggregated a bunch of links and tools to help you continue to learn and expand your knowledge of the Pardot ecosystem. So other apps and tools that work really well with Pardot, this is kind of a short list of things that I'd recommend you check out. So some of them are like full-blown platforms like Qualified for conversational marketing. Others are kind of just free, like purpose-built tools for generating elements to include in emails or style your Pardot forms, add to calendar buttons for your emails. This is kind of just a treasure trove of awesome goodies that play nice with Pardot. Other ways to kind of connect with the community. So we have lots of events in the Salesforce ecosystem, a lot less live ones, obviously, since the events of 2019, but shameless plug here also for Par Dreaming. My company, Sercante, hosts a virtual Pardot conference. We had over 4,000 people registered last year, but it's 3 days of content that's all things Pardot. So sessions on just about any topic that you can think of. If you're interested in speaking or attending, we just opened the call for speakers yesterday. If you have any topics you'd like to submit, and then registration is going to be live in the next 30 days or so. Other kind of online communities to tap into. So the Pardot Success community is very great and supportive. People are really great at answering each other's questions, sharing resources. So definitely would recommend checking that out. And then this is a roundup of some of my favorite Pardot blogs to check out. And then there are 2 Pardot related certifications that are available right now to touch on. Banu asked about how to get a Pardot org for hands-on training. So Pardot does not offer free sandboxes in the same way that Salesforce does. If you sign up for one of the training courses, either through Sercante or through Salesforce, we can get you a demo org. But there is no way. So customers and partners can also sign up for trial orgs. But if you aren't currently a Pardot customer or aren't working with a Pardot customer, that's not currently available. And then I'm not going to go into detail on this, but I'll also include some information on a stack on Sercante's Pardot trainings if anyone's interested in further deep dives on that. So I'll try to turn my camera back on here also. Let's see if we can get that working. But just wanted to open it up for any final questions that you guys may have. And then I think Payal has a survey for us and some goodies to give away potentially.
Thank you, Andrea. That was an amazing session. I hope you guys learned a lot. Guys, do you have any questions? You can post in the chat, else we can move forward to the quiz. We'll be waiting for 2 more minutes, and if there's no question, we'll be moving forward to the quiz.
I see a question in the chat here about major competitors for Pardot in the market. I would say that the most frequent competitors for Pardot are HubSpot and Marketo. Marketo is owned by Adobe. Also, Eloqua is another one that comes up a lot, which is owned by Oracle. But those are kind of the Pardot, Marketo, HubSpot, and Eloqua are kind of like the big 4 of marketing automation tools.
Okay. Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I'll also just add that we also see some like smaller customers working with like MailChimp, Constant Contact, Emma, and some other kind of email marketing tools that are starting to kind of dabble in the automation piece. But I would say for larger to mid-sized companies, it kind of narrows down to HubSpot, Marketo, Eloqua, and Pardot.
Okay, so I guess we are good to start with the quiz. Guys, there's no duplicate entry will be allowed. All you have to do is you have to join the link I'll be sharing in the chat window, and then we will be starting the quiz. Top 3 contenders will be winner, like candidates will be winning the certification voucher.
Yeah, and I'll warn you guys that the quiz is a little bit hard, or maybe a little bit hard. I think the kind of the nuances between different automation tools and how to use them differently. It's one of those things that you learn a lot when you start doing it hands-on. So if you've had a lot of hands-on experience with Pardot, some of these might come easy to you. If you're newer to Pardot and get a few of these quiz questions wrong, don't feel bad because it takes a while to get the hang of it.
Yes. So guys, you have to open this link in your laptop on your or in your devices, and I'll be sharing the code. Or you can join in with the link I have posted in the chat window. You can join us with this link directly.